Thank you for everyone for joining this session. This is our third session that we've done on Unlock the Power of Acumatica. So today's session, we're going to hand over to TRAILD, which is one of our independent software vendors that links into MYOB Acumatica, and their whole business is around the AP automation, like streamlining your processes when it comes to accounts payable, automating some of those processes and protecting. So funny enough, TRAILD was born from one of our side-biz clients. So there's a company called Mount Barker Chickens down in Mount Barker, obviously, and they had an issue where there was some fraudulent behaviour, and I won't steal all of Tracy's thunder, but yeah, there was some fraudulent behaviour that happened, and a invoice got paid that shouldn't have been, well, the bank account details were incorrect, and it was fraudulent. And so then the founders of TRAILD were obviously part of that family business and built out a system to protect, obviously the accounts payable side of things. And then off the back of that, built out, streamlining the automation. So, doing things like freeway matching when it comes to invoices, and also, that automating of processes. So, yeah, look, I really like TRAILD from the perspective of the protection side of things. Being able to see, some, behaviours when it comes to your accounts payable side of things, where, you may be paying a supplier a larger amount of money that you wouldn't normally spend with them. Even to the point of being able to check websites for, when you load up your suppliers, checking their websites to make sure they're not hosted in, some foreign country that they shouldn't be. And also things like the BSB and account numbers that they actually have like a TRAILD database. So if you're paying a certain supplier and their BSB and account number is different to what all other TRAILD users are paying, then it will actually flag put some red flags and draw your attention to that. And the other thing as well is, we have found in the past there's been, reports of ABA files being manipulated by staff, well, by fraudulently. I won't say staff or anything like that, but ABA files have been actually manipulated, and then when they get loaded into the bank, there's been fraudulent behaviour that happens from there. So I'm not going to steal all of Tracy's thunder because she's going to go through that today, but I just thought it was really worth noting some of those key things that I see that are really important for any business, really. So it's not just about the streamlining at the automation, but it's also about how we protect our accounts payable. So these sessions that we're going to be hosting one every month, and it's all about how do we help you, get obviously more out of the core functionality of MYOB Acumatica, and look at ways that we can help you, streamline your processes, improve processes, and the automation side of things, and get more value out of the existing licenses that you pay for. In saying that as well, though, sometimes it might be, as we've got TRAILD on the call today. There's a lot of ISV independent software vendors that are out there, and we call them ISVs. That's the MYOB official term. But there's a lot of ISVs out there that we can help build and streamline your business, from things like TRAILD to WageLock. We also have built our own application. So we've got a program called AlphaLink, which is a middleware component which can help synchronize. It can help third-party applications that maybe not authorized ISVs to connect into your MYOB Acumatica system. And then we've also created our own system called AlphaPod, which is a proof of delivery system. So there's all these automations and processes that we can help you with. So yeah, I just want to point out that it's not just also about what's in the existing MYOB, it's also how do we extend it out further as well. So let me just introduce. So on the host, but I'm going to hand over to Tracy in a second and let her take you through some of the real key benefits and points about TRAILD, and then she'll go through and do a bit of a live demonstration on the system. If you've got any questions, because we have got a bit of a smaller group today than what we had last month, please come off mute, ask a question. Let's keep it interactive and go from there. Or if you're a bit shy and don't want to ask a question verbally, you can ask in the chat or the Q&A box at the top of the screen.
Thank you all for coming today and joining and having the opportunity to hear a little bit more about TRAILD. So first off, before we get into TRAILD, who am I? My name is Tracy. I'm based in Perth. I'm actually the head of solution engineering at TRAILD, but I've been working in ERP in about 20 years and got a pretty good understanding about how things work amongst all the different systems and particularly in the MYOB and Acumatica side. So if anyone wants to talk debits and credits to me, go for your life. I'm sort of, that's my bent and that's where I've come from. So a little bit for us, and Adam, thank you, mentioned about Mount Barker Chicken. And obviously as our businesses and organisations are working and running through our processes, we employ staff and we're trusting all the information we have. But sadly in 2024, there's a lot more fraud. And we've got more people who are actioning and looking at the data and the information that we have. So TRAILD was born out of this process of there's challenges that as management and finance directors, CFOs, we really have these challenges where we need to actually look at where are our invoices coming from and how are we actually using them. We have so much information now in 2024. A little bit of it is also about what information do we actually need to see rather than the information that we have available to see. So therein lies our streamline, automate and protect. So streamline is really about how do we actually get that invoice from either attached to the box that's delivered at the door or in our email all the way through to the supplier being paid. We have a number of challenges that come with that, and sometimes it's simply just who on earth do I ask a question of about this particular one. We talk about automate, and that's really about using the automation program and the OCR to be able to read that information so we're not left typing in invoice numbers, typing in invoice dates. And we all know, and it happens every time, that in January we're all going to type the 10th of January 2024 because we've been used to typing 2024 for the last 12 months. So the more we can automate these things, the less errors, of course, we're going to receive. And finally, it's about protect, and that's where a bit of our AI technology comes in. And that's really where TRAILD can very quickly read bank account details on your invoice and look at the bank account details that you've got in your Acumatica and alert you if there's an error, alert you if there's a change. Has the bank account detail been updated shortly? This kind of information that as a human being, it takes a long time to do and is quite difficult. Some of my PowerPoint's just decided to slow down. So really it's Ren about, we've got those stack of invoices that come in and no one likes doing it. It's a bit like sort of, doing the washing. It just sort of sits there until it piles up. How you go about matching your receipts. If the receipt's not done, what do we do? How do we get that receipt working? Have we actually chatted to the guys about whether it's in or not? Should this invoice be approved? What other information do we need? And of course, if you start missing out on discounts because we haven't got our invoice into the system early enough. If you have a think about all that and you start to say, well, hang on, I'm not going to have to key in the supplier detail. I don't have to key in the invoice number. I don't have to key in all this information. And I have a process and a dashboard, if you like, that's really going to allow me to have full visibility of all my invoices. What's my return on investment? How much is my business going to save if instead of taking 10 minutes or even 5 minutes to do an invoice, it takes 1 or 2 minutes? And you can start to see that if you have 2, 3, 4, 500 invoices a month and you're saving that time, where can your employees be better utilizing their time? What can they be doing that enables you to have a greater profit in your organization rather than just simple data entry? And of course, there's fraud, and Adam mentioned about that. And sadly, in 2024, it's on the increase. We see emails. I'm sure you guys get them. I certainly do. You haven't paid this invoice, or you have paid this, and it's really just about how we're checking that. Business email compromise certainly is on the rise. And unfortunately, there are people out there who are going to be looking for invoices you receive regularly, and they'll change the bank account detail to be yours, and they'll send you those invoices. Now, TRAILD goes through and looks at the pixels of the logo on the invoice and is picking up anomalies and actually comparing the bank account details that you're paying to the bank account details that other TRAILD users are paying in the platform to the same supplier. We've got a number of very happy TRAILD customers in the Acumatica space, and there's a few of them there, but I'm just going to jump in now and show you the product. Now, as Adam's mentioned, and Kenneth has just put a comment in the chat, please, if you have any questions as we go through, raise your hand, type something in the chat, add a Q&A, and I'm happy to go through them. Otherwise, when I get to the end, I will ask you if anyone has any questions. So hopefully you'll be able to see my screen here, and this is the TRAILD dashboard. So this is where your finance and AP clerks will be running from every day. And this enables them to have a full list of visible invoices that have arrived in your organization. Now, the idea of TRAILD is they come into TRAILD as soon as they arrive at your organization. So it's not once you know what it's for, it's not once you've checked whether it's been receipted, it's not once it's got approval. It's right up front, right at the very beginning. Now, there's different ways you can get your invoices into the system. You can use the green uploads button, you can drag and drop, or you can email them directly in. So if you've got accounts payable at alphabiz.com.au, you could set a forward up on that and have them come straight in. Now, I've loaded a couple of invoices in this morning just to save us some time, but generally the invoices take 10 seconds or so each to be loaded. Now, when your invoices are loaded into TRAILD, they go through two processes simultaneously. The first is OCR, optical character recognition. And that's where TRAILD's going to read off your invoice pertinent pieces of information that you're going to need. Now, we can see here for these 4 invoices I've uploaded, it's read directly off the invoice number. It's read the purchase order number also off the invoice, if that's on there. Now, this little black square says that TRAILD has actually taken a look into Acumatica, and it can see that you already have receipts in Acumatica for this purchase order. And so that's going to enable that sort of automatic 3-way match. It's read the vendor, your supplier, off the document, and it does that by looking at the name, the logo, but also your ABN number. It's pulled through a branch, it's read the invoice date, the due date, the invoice total, all off the document, and that's without you having to do anything. Now, in this scenario, it's assigned all of these invoices to me because I was the one who uploaded them. And what we'll start to see is each of your invoices are going to have a different status depending on where they are within the workflow. So maybe let's start with this invoice here that has a purchase order and has receipts in your Acumatica system. So we simply click on the URL and it opens. Now, TRAILD is a web-based program, so you can access it anywhere. You can do it on your phone, on your iPad, on your laptop. You could do it while you're sitting at the beach. It does actually allow you to use the functionality of 2FA in order to be able to log in, or you can simply use a username and password. So we've now opened this Oz.org invoice. Now, what you'll be able to see on the left-hand side, we've got full visibility of this invoice that we've uploaded or emailed into the system. We can turn the invoice around, turn it up the other way if we need, turn it landscape. We can zoom in and out. You could download a copy of the invoice if you needed a specific copy. you have the option to upload additional files against this invoice. And if we think of the sort of old school hard copy invoice, this would be like stapling something to the back of it. If you've got multiple pages, you can flick through the different pages. On the right-hand side then here, you've got your entry screens. So we're going to start with the invoice number. Now what you can see here, and hopefully you can see that little red box over this side, is where the OCR has read the information directly off the document. So it doesn't require template learning. It knows where that invoice number is. And what it does then is the machine learning is looking at other alternatives that could actually be an invoice number. Now, if, for example, I chose this field here, and you can see where that is over here on the document, then the machine learning element will kick in, and the next time we load an AusOrg invoice up, it will know to look in this location for your invoice number. But in this case, of course, it's actually found it in the right location. The system then goes through and chooses the correct branch for you and your vendor. As I mentioned, that one's based on the name, the ABN, and then also the logo. Your location is chosen, and you can update these if you need. Your purchase order number is again read directly off the document with some other options coming through from the machine learning tool in case you need to update that. If you need to, you can add your projects and tasks at the header level, which will apply to all the various lines that you're going to have on your invoice. The invoice date is read off the document, the due date. You can add a post period, and you can add your description here if you wish, which will go through to your Acumatica. This middle section here is the supplier details or the vendor details coming direct from Acumatica. Now, Acumatica is going to be the single point of truth for your supplier information. And if you need to change anything, you can do that in Acumatica. And it has an automatic sync between Acumatica and TRAILD. Finally, the right-hand column is your pricing. And guess what? Invoice total, again, is read directly off the document. There's no need to key that in as well. So that's the header information of our invoice. We're now going to go down and look at our lines. Now you'll remember on that very front screen I showed you the little black box that told you that there are receipts available in Acumatica for this particular purchase order. We can see that here. It says add all receipted items, and there's a nice big red 3 here. If I simply click this line, my 3 receipt lines are going to automatically come into TRAILD. Now, if I hover over the little box, it's going to tell me what purchase order number and receipt number and the various pieces of information that I would need. Incidentally, when I put my finance hat on, I love the fact that I can see the purchase order unit cost, the receipt unit cost, as well as now my invoice unit cost, all very simply in one place. I'm also liking the idea that I can see the original general ledger code, sub-account and project, if applicable, that this purchase order was originally coded to. Kind of helpful if you need to update a value somewhere because you know where it's going to go. Now on this particular invoice, you can see that there's a variance here of $132. So basically what that's saying is the value of the receipt doesn't match the value of the invoice. But TRAILD's clever enough, and it's read that there's actually freight. You can see a freight line here on this invoice. And I've got a freight button here that's open and available for me. If I click on this freight button, it's going to add a freight line. If I click on here, you'll be able to see it's read the freight line directly off the document. So again, no need to key it in. And it's been allocated to a pre-configured freight expense account. Now you can actually update that freight expense account if you wish to any of the active GL codes that you have available in your Acumatica system. Now once your invoice balances, so the lines balance to the header, we're all ready to submit this for approval. So I'm going to submit this one to approval. Now we're going to submit a couple of invoices through for approval this morning. They are actually going to come back to myself because I'm not very good at being multiple people in one session, but I will go through and show you how our approval workflow works. So then that's an invoice that's got a purchase order, but I'm supposing many of you are going to have invoices that don't have purchase orders. And how do we work with those? So let's open this Kingfisher Electrical invoice. Again, we've got full visibility of the invoice on the left-hand side. We can see all the information. And we start to enter our entry screen. So we start with the invoice number. Yes, that looks exactly correct. Vendor location. Now, it hasn't populated a purchase order number because it doesn't have a confidence value that says there is a purchase order number. But our machine learning tool is going to give you some options in case there actually is a purchase order number. Worth noting that this purchase order number is a free format text field. So if there is a PO, but it's simply not on the purchase order, you can type a reference in there. Invoice date, due date, etc. I can add a description in here if I want to. Services. Invoice total read directly off the document. Now you'll notice here some warning messages that we didn't see on the previous invoice. Payment details problem. Payment details have changed. You can actually see on this particular document that the account number here that's on this document is not the same as the account number that's in your Acumatica system. And this is also saying that someone in your Acumatica has previously changed the payment detail. And this warning's going to come up. It'll alert you at this point so that the clerk is aware that there's a challenge in the payments. But as we go through and we work out through our approval rules, that message is going to be escalated and this invoice is going to become a high risk. So what do we do now for our lines? There's a bunch of different ways we can manage non-purchase order lines. We could choose to split this invoice at a header level. So that's quite useful if you've maybe got a stationary bill that you want to split across to different departments. I can split my invoice. I can say how many do I want to split it to. I'm going to split it 2 ways here. It's going to add 2 lines using the description that I'd applied at the top and say 2 lines is 50-50. Of course, I can change these and say 55%, 45%. You'll see that the values are automatically updated and you can allocate the appropriate general ledger code, sub-account and project that you would need to in order to allocate that. You could also go and choose to add from invoice. So if I choose this add from invoice button, what you can see happening here is the description is being read automatically off the invoice. You'll notice we don't like people having to type things. So each of the lines, the description is being read. The quantity is also taken, as well as the unit cost. Now, the general ledger code sub-account and project is remembered from the last time that you've loaded a Kingfisher invoice. But of course, at this stage, if you've got multiple lines like this, you could choose to update them. But what about if you didn't know? What about if you got this invoice and you're like, man, I have no idea where this information is meant to be going? We can simply come down here and we can start tagging a user. I'm going to tag Josh. Where should this invoice be allocated? Now, Josh is going to receive an email straight away asking him this question and giving him the information he needs in order to be able to do this. Now, so I can keep track of where this invoice is actually up to in my process, I'm actually going to assign this invoice to Josh. And I'm going to save it as draft. So I keep exactly where I'm up to, but I can actually save it. Then as an accounts clerk, I can see that this invoice is currently sitting with Josh. Imagine it's the 29th or the 30th of the month and you're trying to analyze all your accounts payable and see all the invoices that haven't yet been entered into your Acumatica system. I can see this as with Josh. I can actually come in here and mark this as urgent because Josh hasn't replied. Maybe I realize Josh isn't well and I can come back here and I can change this to Brad. The benefit of TRAILD is as I come down here, I can actually see when it was assigned to Josh, when it was marked as urgent, and when it was marked as assigned to Brad. So there's no longer Josh can say, oh, I never received it. We can actually say, no, actually you did receive it. And you're going to be able to see exactly what's going on with that invoice, and you end up with a full audit trail of everything that's happening. Now I'm going to go back and add from invoice and populate my information. Incidentally, the other options that you have with these types of invoices is you can paste in from Excel. So if you've got sort of a fuel charge type card or maybe your Telstra bill and you want to allocate that to multiple people, you could download that into Excel and paste it in. So I'm just going to populate this, put that one back to myself. Wherever it went, there we go, and I'm going to submit that invoice. Now the last invoice that I have here that I was going to show you today is I'm sure some of you have some suppliers that, like this Avis invoice, actually send multiple invoices in one PDF. Now I've seen people go to the photocopier and photocopy one invoice at a time and try and pull them out, and it's relatively complicated. So you'll see in here, there's 3 pages, 1, 2, 3, and each one of those is a different PDF or a different invoice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this document here. Now TRAILD will go and analyze this 3-page PDF and decide where the beginning and the end of each of these invoices are. You can see it's actually cutting it at the end of each page. I can turn the cut off, so I could say, actually, no, it's just one and then these 2 are together. I'm going to choose to split that. Now that will pull out of TRAILD the original 3-page document, split that into 3 individual invoices, and then re-upload the 3 individual invoices ready to be processed. So let's go and have a look while that's running at what our options are for approvals. We have a very simple approval rules structure, and we like to give you the tools to be able to do these for yourselves. So we basically come in here and we create an approval rule. You give it a name, new rule, something very logical. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. And you start to add conditions. Now the conditions you can add are cost code, your supplier or vendor, the GL code, the total, the location, owner, project, task, sub-account, who submitted it, so who asked for approval, the country of the supplier, really helpful if you've got lots of overseas suppliers you're looking at, and who uploaded the invoice. So maybe one of the more common ones is to say, if the invoice total is greater than, let's say, $2,000, and so you can add multiple conditions on each of these, the general ledger code is like. Now, most of you will find that your general ledger codes will have some sort of logic. And you might say, actually, our IT codes have 25 in them and our marketing codes have 35 in them. So we can have something like hash, whoops, that's not hash, hash dash 25 hash 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 to say every invoice that's allocated to any general ledger code with a 25 in. And then you start to add in the levels of approvals that you want it to be. So I'm going to add, first off, for an invoice greater than $2,000, I'd like either Ian or Josh to approve it. And then once either one of those have approved it, then I would like Tim to approve. And we can have 5 levels of approval with multiple people in each stages. So using this combination of conditions, levels, and approvers, we can sum up basically any of the different options you need. So when you hit submit on that invoice, TRAILD will analyze exactly where the invoice needs to go and route it to them for their approval. We have recently added in the idea of a delegation. So let's say if Tim is away on holidays for 2 weeks, we can simply set up a delegation. So for this 2-week period, while Tim is on leave, we're going to have Adam do his approvals for him. So what does approvals look like? When we're going into approvals, so we've got 2 here that are waiting for me to approve, we're going to go into the waiting on me. Now what you'll see is as invoices go through into the approvals, they have a different risk warning. So there'll be low, medium and high, depending on different analysis that TRAILD is doing. So let's jump into this Kingfisher one first. Again, from an approval screen, we have full visibility of the invoice on the left-hand side. If you had attached additional files, you would be able to see those here. We can automatically see that this invoice is a high risk. And it's a high risk because of that payment details issue that we looked at in the first screen. We can also see that this particular invoice exceeds the previous maximum. So imagine you get a cleaning bill and your cleaning bill is $500 every week, and then all of a sudden your cleaning bill is $5,000. To know that it's going to become an elevated risk invoice because it's greater than your maximum is something that's really important. We have full visibility of the invoice details, the supplier information with that previously changed bank account, as well as the pricing. I can see exactly where this invoice has been allocated to, as well as the audit flow. Now I could simply reject this invoice and send it back to our clerks for actioning, or I could actually come in here and I could send Tim a message. Please, phone the supplier and confirm bank details. I'm going to send that message to Tim, but I'm also going to reassign it to Tim because he can actually have a look at that one and then approve it. TRAILD then automatically takes me to my next invoice, and this invoice is a low risk. It's giving me all the information about the purchase orders that we've allocated to. I can actually hover on the black square and I can see exactly the details of the purchase orders. Again, visibility on seeing where that purchase order was originally coded to, as well as this additional line that we allocated for freight. I'm actually happy with this invoice and I'm going to approve it. Once we've got our approved invoices, we can simply select the box and export them all out into your Acumatica. When they come into your Acumatica, and here's an Ozone Organics invoice that I had pushed in a little earlier, you can see that all the relevant information comes in. We also pull through the risk score, who approved it, and when they approved it. We also bring in the actual PDF that you had uploaded into TRAILD. So now your users have got the ability to see the invoice from within Acumatica. A couple of other things that I just want to quickly show you. If any of you have the need to be able to do a supplier reconciliation, you can simply jump into the supplier and you can see all of the invoices here that are in the supplier's information. If I have my supplier statement with me, I can simply click the invoices that are on my supplier statement, add them to a new reconciliation, enter a reference number of value and save that. So that can be quite helpful if you have particularly suppliers with multiple large invoices over a month. Your payments, and Adam mentioned about your ABA file check. This is an ABA file that has been uploaded into the system, and what you can start to see is each of these payments is giving you risk scores. Now, when we order this file and we bring it in, we actually put the data that has the highest risk score right at the top. So it's very clear on what the error is. So this one is saying that actually this ABN details is not active and this supplier is not registered for GST. So we go through different risk scores. Finally, reports. Many of you may be audited. My favorite time of the year, not. And we all know that when the auditors come in, they want all the information and they'd like it yesterday. So we actually provide you this report. There's a number of different reports. This report can be quite useful, particularly if you want to do accrual accounting. We can see exactly which invoices are not in the system already. But this is going to give you a full list of all your invoices. And I can actually download this report and it comes into Excel. Now, if you wish to give your auditor access to your TRAILD, you can then just send them this Excel file. It has the invoice number, purchase order number, the vendor, branch description. You can see who requested it to be approved, who approved it, what the status of this particular invoice is, all the different information that you would need. But what you'll also find is there's a URL here. And if your auditor has access, they can simply click the URL. It will open TRAILD. They will need to log in and they have full visibility of the invoice that you'd entered into TRAILD. They can see the audit trail of what had happened, any of the comments, and they would be able to see if it's been exported into Acumatica and if it had, exactly when it had been exported. Hopefully that sort of gives you a bit of a general overview. That was a bit of a sort of relatively quick run through of different functionality in the system. As Adam mentioned, if anyone's interested in knowing more, we're very happy to do a specific demo for you. But I'm just going to open the floor now to any questions that anyone has on that.
Thank you.
Natasha's got a question. We use a competitor. If we move to TRAILD, do we lose all access to our invoices that is being saved in the competitor, or can we move it across? Who's the competitor?
ProSpend. We use ProSpend.
Oh, okay. And it is, so does ProSpend attach into MYOB Acumatica similar to TRAILD or not?
No, ProSpend keeps the invoices. We have a link from MYOB to ProSpend.
Okay.
Natasha, I would imagine that ProSpend should be able to give you a list of all the documents that are in your system. Certainly TRAILD can go and do that for you if you wanted them from TRAILD, but that's probably one of the reasons why we put the document into your Acumatica system, so that there's sort of 2 copies of the document, and that covers you off for your audit process. So from an audit process in Australia, obviously you need 7 years history. And you can actually declare that audit process based on the information you have stored in your Acumatica system or the information you have stored in TRAILD.
Cool. Anyone else got any questions at all? I hope that answers that for you, Natasha.
Well, not quite, but yeah, I think I'm gonna have to ask ProSpend that question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Obviously, yeah. ProSpend is also another ISV that we do support. So, but yeah, it obviously TRAILD is built more around that fraud. It started from that fraud background. So and fraudulent sort of behaviour, and that's so where we see for companies that have that high risk and wanting to manage that behaviour, and that's where we sort of push in that direction. Obviously ProSpend, not selling ProSpend here, but yeah, ProSpend obviously was built more off of the expense management side of things, and it has some strong areas in that respect as well. So both have some unique offerings as well.
I do have one more question actually. Because we're moving into a lot more reporting, a lot more governance around our expenses, is there like something within the TRAILD product timeline in the future where you'll start to consider a bit more a bit stronger vendor management? Things like, does this particular supplier fit our cybersecurity thing? Has this supplier been checked for modern slavery and things like that? Is that something that's in your product timeline in the future?
It is something that we're looking at. At the moment, we're looking more around the verification of supplier details. So we're looking at the ABN registration, GST registration, and specific bank account details. But some of the other information that you've mentioned is something that we are looking at trying to do, and just trying to get the right APIs to be able to get that information from.
Yes. Cool. Thank you.
No worries. Basically, our product is a subscription-based product. So it's based on the number of invoices that you'll process in a month. We do average that because we understand that businesses will have peaks and troughs throughout a year. It sort of includes unlimited users, unlimited approvers, and includes all your support and everything in that sort of monthly subscription cost. It also is a no lock-in contract, and I think that's important to note that, if after 2 months or 3 months time you kind of go, look, no, this isn't for me, that you can cancel. I don't remember the last time somebody cancelled, because generally once they start using it, it's like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Why didn't we have this before now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and Adam for hosting us today.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you guys. Yeah, cool. I don't know, Tracy, I probably received a couple of months ago the pricing, but if you've got a brochure or something like that I can send, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after this session as well, Kenneth will send out the survey, and then obviously if you want to download the recording of this session, you can download it as well. That'd be great. We're planning on doing the next session, which will be on I think we're looking at the 14th, or I think it's the 14th of November. And one of the common things that we have been getting asked from clients recently is more about how do we help give support, better information around what we need, and also to understand our support process in a little bit more detail. So the next session is going to not really be product focused. It's going to be more about how our support team works with clients, and what are the and this has come off the back of a few clients saying, hey, we want to give you better information. What do we need to do that's better? So I thought for the next sessions, more about sharing things with us like screen IDs, report IDs, and all that sort of stuff. So there's no ambiguity around what we're actually looking at from a screenshot, because sometimes we might get a screenshot from a client and it could be the same report, but different reports look exactly the same. So that session will just be more about how can we all help each other get faster, quicker response times. So that'll be sort of, I think we're aiming for the 14th of November for that session. So that'd be fantastic if we'll start preparing the invitations and sending that out shortly, and go from there.